everyone, and welcome to yet another conversation part of our September series. I don't know why I keep thinking that it's already November, so I almost said November, but no, luckily it's still September. And today we are here to talk about measuring success and even more precisely about KPIs and metrics for technology enabled HR function. My name is Minola Jacques. I will be your co-host for the next hour. Jessa is backstage taking exquisite care of us as usual. And first off, I would love to welcome everybody in the audience. And if you can help us, just drop a few comments, maybe just let us know where you're connecting from. And this way, first, you help us know that technology is up and running and we're not stuck in some back loop on LinkedIn. And second, you will help us travel around the world vicariously. So just let us know a few comments, just pop your location right in, and we will know that we are live and everything works properly. We have an amazing lineup of speakers for today. So Jessa, if you can just bring them on stage, and as they will settle into their boxes on the screen, I will just encourage everybody listening to us or watching us, do consider, we have Texas. Welcome, Melanie. Thank you so much. Do consider this conversation open to you as well. So whatever it is that we are discussing with our panelists, drop off your own stories, your own take, your own opinions, your own reflections, because first, this is a wonderful way and an extremely generous way to help this community learn from each other. And second, we always are fascinated by all the cultural, geographical, generational, industry nuances that everybody in the audience brings into our conversation. So I do see already quite an international audience. This really warms our hearts. So yet again, welcome everybody. It's just a pocket of sunshine on a very gloomy, very rainy day here in Basel, in Switzerland. So I hope that this conversation will feel like a hug to everyone listening. Now, let's make the most out of our short hour today. I keep saying that hacking HR hours are so much shorter than regular hours. And what I will do, I will pass the e-mic around and I will first ask you to shortly introduce yourselves. And also the first challenge for today is when you hear technology-enabled HR function, what is the first word, one word that pops in your mind? I will give you just a few seconds to think about that word. Just continuing to welcome everybody in the audience and giving everybody heads up. We have two panelists who hopefully will be able to jump on the link. So if there's a little bit of disruption as we welcome them into the conversation, we will go agile, not fragile. So let's kick it off. Janet, good to see you on my screen. Tell us a little bit about yourself and technology-enabled HR function, one word.
Oh, so good. Good morning, Manola. I've been definitely watching you on all of these podcasts for a couple of years now. So this is the first time we've gotten to be together on screen. So I'm so excited to meet you as a Hacking HR fan. And so my name is Janet Rico Urig, and I currently serve as Human Resources Director for Pima Community College in the lovely and sunny Tucson, Arizona. So sending you warm hugs to both you, Christina, and Manola, and very excited. So my one word is real time, and I know it's two words, but it's hyphenated. So that is when I hear technology driven, that's what I think of.
Thank you so very much. And yes, indeed, it's the first time that we share a conversation space. It's great to finally be on the same screen at the same time. And it's the same situation with Chrisana. It's so good to see you. It's so good to meet you.
Yes, absolutely. Same here. Thank you for having me. So yeah, Chrisana Wallace. I live just outside of Boston, Massachusetts in the United States. I see we have someone here from Orange, Massachusetts, so we're not far from each other. I am currently the Director of People and Culture for Clearest, which is a sustainability technology company. And our business model is around shared services. So when we acquire companies, I provide them HR expertise and guidance. And I think when I think of an HR technology enabled function, the word that comes to mind is efficiency. I remember, just not too long ago using Excel for most things that now there seems to be a tech for almost everything, and AI has also really changed the landscape quite a bit. So efficiency is definitely something that I feel is more present now than it was before, prior to all these technologies.
It's wonderful to have both of you here, and we will just keep it like a nice fireside chat amongst friends. The only kind request for help that I have from both of you, when you are not speaking, if you can stay on mute, because there's a little bit of echo. Thank you so very much. And I will definitely pay attention when you want to jump back in and unmute. Now, I just want to invite everybody in the audience, drop us your one word that comes to mind when you hear technology-enabled HR function, and it would be really fun to see what we get from you. Now, before we go really, really deep into today's topic, I would really love to maybe draw a little bit of an outline, like the container for our conversation, and what does a technology-enabled HR function look like to you? What does it feel like? What does it sound like? In what way is it different from any other kind of HR function that we talked about? And because it's just the three of us, I really won't call names. Just unmute yourselves and jump in. Okay, I see the unmuting competition unfolding. So, Chrisana, you won this round.
Yeah, I didn't want to jump in too quick if Janet was ready to speak, but so I think an HR technology enabled function sounds like is hard, but looks like might be just, unfortunately, it's true, is a reduced amount of people that you need in your function to complete certain tasks. So there is more to be done with less people. And especially where you have automation built into some of your tech stack, you can, even prevent yourself from having to run a report once a month that, maybe finance is requesting or whatever it might be, and streamline those things to be automated so that there is not much personal or not much human touch at all. I will that you always have to make sure that you're proofreading everything that comes out and double checking the work that the system is doing for you. I grew up with a dad who was a director in HR, and he still says this to say is garbage in is garbage out. So you need to make sure that what you have in your system, you can rely on, so that when you're reporting on it, it is accurate and it is going to make sense to whoever you're presenting it to. So I think that's kind of what it looks like. Is, again, I go back to that word efficiency. It makes things more streamlined and automated, and I see that meaning that there might be fewer heads in the HR department than there used to be.
Thank you. In the meantime, we have Manisha with us. So Manisha, if it's okay with you, let's wrap this round up with Janet, and then I will bring you into the conversation. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So Janet, what does a technology-enabled HR function look like to you?
So for me, I think in the newer HR landscape, right, that our KPIs are going to be evolving beyond just operational metrics and spreadsheets, right? Really focusing our work on outcomes that drive business values. And so some of the things that in my organization that we talk about is the employee experience, and really, right, getting feedback to measure how our employees are supported by technology, how that their work experience is. The other thing we have really found in terms of moving beyond just operational KPIs is looking at our employees' ability to adopt effectively to new digital tools and platforms, right? We have to maintain a competitive workforce. And so often that digital literacy at every level of the organization, but also with every generation that's in our workplace. a lot of times my HR team will talk about the quality of hire as it relates to the work we do. And so making sure that we're evaluating that, what does that look like from our long-term performance and retention in the organization. And lastly, for me, what I see in terms of the more focus on the outcomes is the agility, not just the agility of human resources, but how our teams are reacting, adaptable, responsive to the workforce that's changed, right? In terms of the last 4 years and because of COVID, but really the team's organizational ability to respond to innovation is something that we're also keeping an eye on.
How awesome. Thank you so very much, both. And we will do a welcome loop for Manisha. So great to have you on our screens. Now, Manisha, you are the lucky winner of 3-in-1. So you will have one question with 3 layers. The first one you probably know is just tell us a very, very little bit about yourself. And then you will have the 2 questions we have so far. The first one is, what is the first word that comes to your mind when you hear technology-enabled HR function? And you probably guessed it by now. We were talking a little bit about what does a technology-enabled HR function really means, so that we have an outline for our conversation. So a few words about yourself, 1 word, and then a bit of a context setting. Welcome.
Thank you, Minola. It's always a joy. It's like 7 in the morning here. And if you are the host, you crack me up. So thank you. It's good to meet all of you again, definitely. I'm Manisha Gupta. I am the Vice President of Products. So I lead people intelligence, really making products that I would say productize and operationalize a lot of the conversations we have in the HR world today. So really not a part of the official HR world, but all my friends are HR. That's the way I like to say it. And I think I'm learning a lot from you. The word that comes to my mind when I think of technology-enabled HR, Minola, would be enablement. It's normally outcome and enablement, but Janet already covered outcomes. And the reason I say enablement is because it enables HR to drive a lot of the initiatives home, which they haven't otherwise been able to. Because, I mean, let's just take a step back. Digitization means you are connected, right? So I'm tracking my past with my future, with my current, because everything is now tracked. The conversations are flowing much easier across organizations. When really the starkest one often in many organizations seems to be HR and finance, right? So simple things like the definition of headcount, forget about all the good stuff we want to talk about. The definition of headcount sometimes doesn't align between HR and finance. So conversations don't drive that easily. The other thing I would say is when HR is digitized, because you can have a lot more matrix driven conversation, which normally wasn't the possibility, we are able to connect with business leaders, right? So general managers, head of engineering, head of sales, everybody. And we are able to drive conversations home in terms of anything you think about. What are the skills you have? What skills you don't have? How are you tracking performance? How are you not tracking performance? What are the sentiments in your systems? What are the next level of engagements that managers should be part of? So really it's enabling across the board, with HR almost like being the on the driver's seat, but being able to ask everybody to hop in the bus. Let me show you how you could run a very informed, outcome driven organization and be connected with each other and with your past and your future. So enablement is probably the word that is coming to me this morning.
Thank you. So just testing my memory, we had real time from Janet, we had efficiency from Krisana, and we have enablement from you. And I will come to collect a little bit more on these conversation candies. Now, I was looking at the comments, and we have a comment from Melanie Alexander saying an AI HR bot, but better. And we have a comment. I'm so sorry, I can't see your name. You appear as a LinkedIn user, anonymous LinkedIn user on my screen. No human error while using technology. So maybe the next challenge is to go a little bit deeper and really look at what is success in this new environment, and how is this success different from how we were used to think about success and what would look like before. And Janet, I would invite you to lead us into this slice of the conversation.
So, such a great question. And so, for me, what success looks like is an opportunity to, even within AI or an AI driven HR technology space, is to think about psychological safety. And so, one of the things that for me, in my experience, I've seen is employees have a lot more opportunity to be productive, and that often translates to pretty much increase in revenue per employee, which is great. But those productivities also have to align for me with employee satisfaction, not just in their work, but in the technology, because I think that satisfaction with HR technology can reveal its impact and engagement and efficiency, like Christina was mentioning earlier. That high satisfaction can help organizations really justify further investment. Success for me looks like a reduction in turnover rates. So if technology is improving our employees' learning, the opportunity to lower turnover, it really helps present that strong case for continued investment.
Manisha, would you like to take it from here?
Yeah, sure. I think the way I look at it, in the earlier era, the focus was a lot on activity, right? So we are tracking if things are getting done properly. And we are probably tracking if everybody is doing it consistently across the organization. So a lot of focus was on activity, like has everybody done performance reviews? Has everybody filled the engagement surveys? Everybody hired the right 5 steps of hiring, etc. Now that we are in a more connected and I would say enabled world, we are able to focus instead of just activity on the impact or outcomes, as people say. So great that you have done the performance reviews, but what was the impact of the performance reviews? Great that you've hired, but have you hired from the get-go? Are you hiring a person who might be a high-performing person going forward, right? Yes, you are engaged with us, but somebody said AI agents or chatbots. You are engaged, but is your engagement yielding performance for the organization? I would also go to the extent of saying, because we are all connected and we are all almost like transparently enabled to do our work that we have signed up for, it's driving growth on both the ends. Growth for the employee. I can now be the shepherd of my or steward for my own career path. I can understand what skills I need to acquire to get promoted going forward, right? So I can drive my own outcomes. My managers can also see what kind of skills they have in the team, what are the gaps in the team, what are the gaps that needs to be filled to do other business initiatives. So we can drive our own growth at the human level, at the team level, and obviously at the company level. So in a nutshell, if I had to say, like, pre-digital era, it's always about, hey, did you do this, Minola? It's like a hey, and it's management by memos, and memos do not, you can't collectively aggregate memos up and down. But now with digital processing, outcomes are easier, impact is easier, and so fixing things that were likely not working earlier is faster for us.
Yeah, I can wrap up the question. I think echoing little pieces of what Janet and Manisha have said is, I think HR, and it depends on how, each one of us thinks about HR differently and how we used to think about it. But the way I used to think about it is that it was more of an administrative type of function where it was very reactive instead of proactive. And so now that we have all of these technologies at our fingertips, instead of, to Manisha's point, just executing on activities that are being asked of us, maybe from the top down, we're able to identify any gaps that might have been hiding in the data that we didn't have before, things that are affecting culture that we didn't know were there. So being more proactive and able to use what we have to identify areas of improvement, and then bringing those to the leadership team to say, I think that this might be affecting revenue, this might be affecting customer satisfaction. Let's try and address this proactively. So I think that's how I think of HR is successful now, as being more of a proactive partner than a reactive admin type of role.
Yeah.
Well, you right about now, you made me curious about any KPIs and any metrics that are completely new that have emerged over the past, I don't even know what's the reference period, 2 years? Let's concentrate on the past 2 years. So, any KPIs, any metrics that are newcomers into this world. And I'm really curious, which one surprised you most? And I will leave that question on the table, and let's see who comes first. And I'm not gonna measure your unmute efficiency, just saying, so no pressure. Surprising new KPIs and metrics. Janet.
One of the things that I found really to be surprising was some AI accountability metrics, right? AI is playing a greater role in most organizations. And so for me, making sure that as a result, we are tracking bias reduction metrics to ensure fairness and accountability in those AI-driven decision-making opportunities. I think the other component that was surprising for me was the sense of like a sentiment analysis tools that are often built in digital platforms, those really becoming more prominent. So that real-time analytics and continuous feedback can provide our organizations with that immediate data. A lot of times, I think Chrisana's point of like, right, the old HR measuring at a certain stopping point where because our data is consistently ever changing, that there hasn't ever really been an opportunity to have that immediate real-time data on engagement, well-being, productivity. But the way that instances are changing, that opportunity to allow for faster interventions and be, like Chrisana mentioned, more proactive instead of reactive or firefighting, if you will, can really be helpful. And lastly, for me, the sustainability and social responsibility metrics, I think from an HR perspective, is something that I'm really excited about, because employees today are looking for the impact that they have from the organizational perspective. And so the opportunity to track environmental and social impact of, particularly for me, HR practices, can help organizations really see the value and input on the larger scale.
Wonderful. We have a question from Russia. So I just want to raise it, and maybe we can address it as we go along. Examples of AI accountability metrics. So maybe let's go to Chrisana, because I saw Chrisana unmuted there a few seconds ago, and we will weave into our conversation Rasha's questions. Thank you so much, Rasha.
So I actually would invite Janet to answer this, because I'm also curious. I think if I were to take a guess, I would say that it surrounds the likelihood that maybe candidates are using AI to answer any written-based interview questions, or things that identify where employees are utilizing AI maybe more than they should. But I'm going to let Janet speak to that.
One of the things that for me is really important is bias reducing metrics. So thinking about how they're engaging, how we are measuring the bias, not just, obviously we have done it for many years around our internal folks, around committee members having bias, training against unconscious bias. So really thinking about the work that you're doing and increasingly tracking those bias reduction metrics as an example.
Gotcha. Yeah, historically AI is very biased, so that's a great point. I think the metrics that I have seen a little bit more frequently lately is around diversity and inclusion. So there's two of them that I think are go beyond just the statistics and what you are able to identify in an EEO survey. And so that would be diversity hiring velocity, which is the rate that candidates are recruited and hired compared to minority candidates are recruited and hired compared to overall time to fill. And with that, you're able to identify potential inequities in the hiring process for minority groups. And some larger ATSs or applicant tracking systems like Greenhouse and Lever already have built in. So I would definitely say diversity hiring velocity. The other is inclusion index. It goes much deeper than your typical diversity metrics again, and it includes people's sense of belonging, to point, psychological safety. And then, which I think is the best part of this metric is the equitable access to opportunities within the org. So, are people getting the same opportunities for promotion? And how are we, what metrics are we using to identify us for promotion? Are those, fair to all? So those are the two that I would say are kind of new or at least newer that I've seen in the last few years.
I can bring it home. So I would say I think there's a range, like depending on how you see it. It's definitely the ones already mentioned, ethics around AI, especially the more we start using AI, but also the good part of AI, right? So for example, inferred skills. Like, less than 5% of people really put in their skills in HRIS systems today. I think LinkedIn, we will put it because it's public facing. Internal systems, we likely won't. Like I never have in my 2+ decades of working. But now using AI, we can look into unstructured resumes and your performance reviews and so much more you're talking about in Quora, etc. So I can make out based on what you do and what you have been saying, what skills you may be bringing to the table. And when we do that, we are now making a human being into like a repository of skills, which makes it easier for me to think about career paths. Right. So, and also because you start that engine, now I'm more incentivized to go back and say, hey, what you saw was fine. Maybe 80% you got it right, but the remaining 20, let me tell you, I also know Python and I also happen to be a good communicator. So that's one, just example. The other thing that we are seeing, especially as we focus on the outcome part of it, is the connected KPIs, right? So, for example, it's no more about what percentage of employees are engaged, but what percentage of highly engaged employees are also high performers. Right? So you're able to connect the dots from completely sometimes distant things. So, uh, what percentage of high performers that were hired last year came from a source which is a low cost of hire? Right? So it's really more connecting pieces which were, we have 18 different HR business processes depending on how you count them. But now I have the ability to connect really seemingly disparate business processes in HR using data. And that is where I think the power really is. Um, then also KPIs, which are more at the aggregate level. So it's no more about the individual skills, but what are the team skills, right? And then from the team skills, it can go to aggregate. You have 40% coverage on data science and 10% on UX. What are the ratios in your team? So all those conversations, which normally have been table stakes for functions like finance, and they were able to drive the business forward. Now HR is also in that front running seat and able to claim a seat on the table because we're able to connect a lot of these pieces and again connect them back to outcomes and what changes need to be made, what gaps need to be filled to get more from the investments you're making in workforce. By the way, workforce investment is another one. Workforce in from a ROI to ROWI, return on workforce investment. That's another conversation which is flowing.
Janet.
Yes, two of the things that made me realize when they were talking about outcome, when Manisha was talking about outcomes, a specific example of a bias metric could be your disparate impact ratio. And so thinking about in the hiring process where often some of the work is in human resources, right? Comparing hiring rates between different demographic groups to really identify if there's any AI discrepancies, right? The goal would be that no group is disproportionately disadvantaged by AI or decisions or algorithms. And so looking at that, and the second thing that came to mind in terms of specific examples was using, if you're, again, in hiring, the candidate pool diversity pre and post the intervention that you're implementing. And so thinking about what AI tool am I using in this example, and what is it that in terms of the pipeline at various stages of the recruitment. So your application, interview, offer, whether that bias reduction intervention can be widened in terms of your pool to have access for underrepresented groups. So Krisanna and Manisha inspired me to think of those two specific examples. I know the comments were asking for.
Well, you all three inspired a question, a little bit on the mischievous side, but I fully own it. I was sitting here and I was thinking, if you were the master of the technology-enabled HR function universe, is there a KPI that is still in our life, very much present in our life, but is completely obsolete? It's one of those dinosaur KPIs that you would like to blow into oblivion. So what is one KPI that companies still over-index on and is completely irrelevant for our new reality? I will give you a few seconds to think about it. We are right in the middle of our conversations, and I will just welcome everybody who joined a little bit later. And for those of you who joined a little bit later, or you have to jump off before we wrap up this conversation, just know that this is being recorded so that you can always go back and enjoy the conversation or recommend it to colleagues and friends and fellow HR hackers from either our hackinghrlab.io platform or the same link on LinkedIn. A few minutes after we wrap up, the recording will be available there. So a dinosaur KPI that we should just make extinct. Krisanna, I see you unmuted.
Yeah, so this may be contested. There are still reasons to track turnover. However, taking it a step further and dividing that into regrettable versus non-regrettable turnover, I think is important, where the metric itself, turnover, doesn't tell the full story. Your executives or managers aren't always extremely disappointed when someone leaves a company. Maybe that helped the company out because they needed to exit that person anyway, and they did it, before we go through a performance improvement plan and offer severance and all of that. So regrettable turnover are the people who leave and you are like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I really need that person on my team. This needs to be backfilled yesterday. So regrettable turnover, I think, is a much stronger metric to track. And kind of, those that are your high performers, what they're leaving and why. So it identifies a much bigger issue at hand than just a blanket turnover rate. So yes, of course, you still need to track turnover, but I think companies should more often be breaking it down into regrettable and non-regrettable turnover.
Yeah. Krisanna, just a second. I don't know if it's just me, but your audio is just a little bit hiccupy. There are, you break up for just 1 second. We can still hear what you say, but there's a little bit of a hiccup. Let's see how we move forward.
Okay, thank you.
Manisha.
So I would say again, move from efficiency based to outcome based. So again, Krisanna, you can probably challenge this, but I think time to hire, it focuses too much on the efficiency of hiring fast, and we still don't talk about quality of hire. It's a complex KPI, but about time we start talking about it. We don't talk about cost of hire. We don't talk about quality of hire. We instead talk about time to hire. So maybe not completely eliminate it, but get it in perspective. You don't want to compromise quality just because you hired somebody 10 days earlier. Because I'll leave it at that for now.
Yeah. Janet.
I'm with Manisha. I think that time to fill is really losing relevant. How do you say? Oh my goodness.
Relevant.
Relevance.
Relevant.
I don't know why I'm having trouble coming out of my mouth. Um, Focusing on that quality, and one of the things that I think, to Manisha's point around making sure that, right, that it is complex, but one of the things that, in terms for me, on how we've been looking at the quality of hire, has been using performance evaluations to assess if new hires have met expectations within that, right? Onboarding time, how long has it taken them to get up to full speed? Thinking about even the quality from the hiring manager perspective, thinking and asking, right? A lot of times we have to ask the questions of, are managers, happy with or satisfied with the new hire's performance? Is the experience of the candidate or applicant um, a good one? Is it a cultural fit for them? And so thinking also for me around the idea of the employee lifetime value. And that has been a new thing that I've learned about, because in asking questions about, well, how are we differentiating the quickness, the agileness of hiring to the value that it brings the organization, right? And so that employees value over the course of their employment, and really reflecting that KPI on the impact of that hire, looking at their contribution, investing in their development from that perspective. So time to fill is one that I would also kind of get rid of and replace with quality, but also employee lifetime value for the organization.
Well, thank you so very much for accommodating this question. And the next one comes with a small story and a few spoiler alerts. So last week, I was in Lisbon. There was the World Management Agility Forum, and Hacking HR was a partner of this event. And we had a panel, and we looked at how we can best harness agility and adaptability for the new world of work. And we talked about, and this is the spoiler alert part, we talked about recruitment, we talked about culture ed versus culture fit, we talked about allowing playfulness in the workplaces, but also one of the things that that kept popping up was a different kind of opportunity and challenge that is raised by the multitude of working setups. We have on-site, we have hybrid, we have remote, we have fractional, we have so many different ways in which people now engage with their work, that this literally creates a whole new universe for agility and adaptability. So I do hope that we will get to have the recording of that panel. I will try to make it available for the Hacking HR community as well. But how do you see agility and adaptability playing into the technology-enabled HR function? And I see Sandra's comment with playfulness in the workplace. That would be a great seminar. Sandra, you read my mind, and I am working towards that. Thank you. So stay tuned, and we will get playful, hopefully soon. So Manisha, I see you unmuted. Please.
Yeah, I mean, it's a deep question, Minola, and I think we can talk all day long, and there's probably a lot more to uncover and understand. Um, but I mean, maybe a little bit of a philosophical answer also for right now. But I think processes have to kind of make way for curiosity a lot, and then we have to use technology to understand the human behind the human being, right? So what I mean by that is, so far it's been a world where we've structured a fixed rigid boundary around a concept called a job, right? And then I say, hey, I'm trying to hire 5 product managers, and this is the job description. And then you kind of go shopping for a human being to fit that role. It's going to be very different Now it's about like really a contract, which we are good at signing with contractors, but literally every engagement, every assignment um, is becoming a contract. I need you to do this. And if I'm a manager, I have to be much more clearer and crisper about what I'm expecting to get done. It cannot be a loosey goosey, we'll figure it out, right? And it has to be a curiosity driven conversation on, Manola, like I'm trying to, I don't know, run this webinar and I'm looking for somebody who loves connecting with people, etc., etc. Would you enjoy doing it? I have to be open about Minola might like it for 2 months, but may not want to do it the third month, and it's okay, right? I have to be open about even if I'm doing the same webinar, the shapes and boundaries of that contract will have to change based on the people I'm working with, right? So curiosity, this whole flexibility, it's almost like like a Lego puzzle where every individual could look very different from each other for every contract that you sign up for. So there's a lot more awareness of what you need, a lot more awareness of whom you're bringing in. It's okay. Maybe it's a gig in this person's case. Maybe it's a full-time job in another person's case. Maybe it's a hybrid engagement for somebody. In the end, it's about getting job done, and it's about creating the right. With Lego pieces, we disassemble, assemble, and we keep finishing tasks. So similarly, for every project, really you have to think about you're bringing in a few set of people together to get something done. What is that job that needs to be done? What are the skills, competencies, interests, also not just competencies, but I really love talking to people. I really love engaging early morning and hacking HR panels, whatever, like those kind of conversations have to be had, because especially when you start moving from captive engagement where people are in the room to gigs and hybrid and remote, interest starts carrying a lot more weight than just the skills I have. I mean, I like to say skill and will, right? So great, I can test for the skill, but how about the will? Will you wake up early morning to engage, right? And that again, the only way I'll initially find out is if I'm curious, right? So yeah, I mean, I would say like the more technology creeps in, the more it's kind of helping us, somewhere forcing us to move higher up in that Maslow's law of hierarchy of needs, right? Where you have to start engaging at a psychological, philosophical, much more deeper levels of human connectivity to really get work done. And I think it's fun, right? Because it's not like work is no more mundane. It's, see, look at four of us, different parts of the world. We are on this panel. Like, I don't know, for me, it was early morning, maybe it's late night for somebody. We are here out of will to share and to learn from each other. Nobody asked us to do it, but we are here. And somewhere I think Enrique and you connected with us to find out, yeah, it seems like the three of us, you will do a decent job at it, right? So a lot of it, again, I would go back to curiosity and use technology to really understand the human behind the human. You have to be clearer. You have to connect the right dots. You have to bring the right people together, and you have to let go. Okay, good. This contract is over. Next contract starts. Maybe you don't want to play. It's totally fine, right? And maybe a year later you come back and say, "I'm again raising my hands." It's also totally fine. So that means a lot of intellectual horsepower is spent on connecting meaningfully with people and understanding how we can bring them together. So yeah, I'm going to pause there. As I said, this is a very interesting question and a lot can be said and done here.
Some of the things that really speak to me in terms of the way work has changed has been around productivity, collaboration, well-being, and utilization. I think to Manisha's point earlier that we were often just tracking the tasks of folks, and in a hybrid or in person, in any kind of environment, the productivity level is still something that's consistent, depend even through different environments, that output. But collaboration, I think, is how instances have changed. So many times I'll see folks who have been really ingrained in that in-person interaction find value in how they can collaborate virtually, how they collaborate in person, in the shifts of that. So I think one of the ways to help, right, if we're measuring those things, using feedback and output to measure that effectiveness of collaboration, right? Asking the question. The other piece in terms of well-being from the employment is how we measure how hybrid work impacts mental health and well-being, right? Incorporating the insights that we're taking into the various environments and thinking about how does that really track across the activity, and making sure that that employee experience is still one of value. And the nice thing about technology, from the last thing that I'll mention, is that utilization rate is going to be a little bit easier to track, right? It's not just about how many phone calls they're receiving anymore. It's how are they utilizing the digital collaboration tools, video conferencing, project management platforms, all of those things that hybrid work has shifted. Now, some organizations were doing it long before COVID, but in the public sector environment that I've had the pleasure of working in, it was something that we had to get used to. And so thinking about how we operationalize that hybrid environment shifted for us. And that was one way that we found success in tracking that utilization and really helping folks see that productivity and collaboration were much more valued, and in addition to their well-being.
Yeah, so I think when I think back to the question of how does agility play into the HR function, and by the way, is my audio any better yet?
Let's move on, and if it gets to a point where we can hear you, I will ask you to repeat.
Okay. So yeah, when I think about agility and adaptability and how it plays into the HR function, I think that well, HR in and of itself, especially depending on how big your team is, things change hour by hour, never mind day by day, it's hour by hour. And so when you're able to utilize technology to assist you in being able to be responsive to the constantly changing priorities of a company, then that will help you provide better value at the end of the day. So as an individual, to Manisha's point, the person behind the job, you have to, in this function, kind of always be able to be agile and adaptable to what is thrown your way, especially if you are a team of one. But you also need to adapt to that and be able to say, okay, it's okay, I can put that to the side. Or, maybe you can delegate more often and say, I know that I can count on this person to help me with this while I go work on putting out this fire. And then, thinking about the tools that you have at your fingertips to be able to help you get those things done quickly and not reinventing the wheel every time that, something is coming up in your org. And identifying what might be those repeatable processes and utilizing tech to help you communicate how we handle those in the HR function is also a way to be agile and adaptable. So that's what I would say.
So I have two call outs, two comments from the audience. And they are both from Melissa Stepp. I hope I pronounced your name correctly, Melissa. So Melissa recommends Sandra to check out the Lego Serious Play community. Yes, absolutely. But one gift that I can share with you from the Hacking HR panel of last week is an amazing NGO run by one of our Hacking HR panelists called Chris Marshall. And the NGO is called the Playfulness Institute. And they research playfulness both as a natural state of the human flow, but also playfulness in the workplace. And they advocate for really nurturing playfulness. There's this absolutely wrong assumption that that is the antonym of work, but actually the antonym of work is leisure, not play or playfulness. So do check out playfulnessinstitute.org. And for those of you who are super curious about the topic, there's also a playfulness survey that you can take, and you will see where you are in terms of curiosity, because Manisha mentioned curiosity quite a few times, curiosity, creativity, and connectedness. And I would like to name Melissa Stepp co-facilitator for the next few minutes because she made a very interesting comment. She said, I'd say that low quality hires and high speed hiring times indicates a knowledge gap between HR and hiring managers. So I would love to bring this comment into our conversation, ask for your real time, back to your word, Janet, reactions and thoughts. And is there anything from the technology enabled HR function that we can use to bridge this gap? So thank you very much, Melissa. Very, very appreciated. Let's see who wants to go first. Low quality hires and high speed hiring times. How can we tackle that? Krisana.
Yeah, I would say that the classic relationship or activity that I think of when I think of the HR business partner role is identifying gaps in talent and helping managers to figure out whether they can fill those gaps internally, hire a contractor or hire a full-time employee, and then from there is creating the job description. And so with that process, the HR business partner or the talent acquisition partner needs to be in lockstep with the hiring manager as far as what's needed from this hire, whether it be someone internal, external, or a contractor, however you're filling it. And so that's definitely a good point. You know, when for Melissa, when a talent acquisition partner just takes a job description from a hiring manager without even looking at it, no questions asked, and just posts it on whatever job board you're using, you're definitely going to have a knowledge gap. And especially with tools like AI that are so helpful, they can also be very dangerous where the business partner in that case might just take that JD and ask AI to give it a few interview questions that relate to it. And so it's a very surface level conversation between the recruiting function and the candidates. And the other place that I'll push back a little bit on that, though, is that at some point the hiring manager is part of the interview process, I hope. And they should, if they're trained well enough in their leadership function, they should be able to identify a candidate who might not be a good fit within the first interview. So I think I definitely agree that can create a knowledge gap, the quickness to hiring. But also the hiring manager has to be engaged enough in the interview process to be able to kind of call those candidates out and make sure that they don't get to the finish line. So yeah, it can go both ways, but I appreciate the sentiment there.
Thank you. Manisha.
I mean, I think Melissa is spot on, honestly. Like, there is a gap. And it's also, again, you asked a question earlier, how is the world shifting with digitization? I think it's like, whose responsibility is it to really hire? It is really the hiring manager, right? Who gets the budget to hire a person? Who is responsible for getting work done? It is the hiring manager. The recruiting team is really an enablement team, which makes things easier for them. So my first step is get me a pipeline of people. Some managers I've seen, they pipeline all the time. Like literally, I'm in a conference, I'm pipelining. Literally, you always have a pipeline of a few good candidates, even when you don't have a requisition. You could partner with the TA team much ahead of time, and sometimes keep the what we call the silver candidates. You hired one, but you met three really smart people. Maybe that they can be in the loop. We don't do that. I mean, if you're going to be transactional about it and lean very heavy on just your TA partner to hire the next person, that hiring manager definitely needs a lot more coaching. And the quality of hire, you're spot on, Chrisana. I think the quality of hire primarily can only be validated by the team which is hiring this individual, because really your TA partner is there to ensure things are flowing in place, the diversity aspects you've taken care of, you're interviewing properly, you're being respectful for the candidates, all that stuff. But they are not, I mean, they don't have to get the exact work done. So I mean, spot on. First of all, Melissa, spot on. There is a gap, and that's where I think when you're measuring the hiring team based on on just the time to hire, obviously I want to be good at what I want to do, so I will quickly hire somebody just to meet my KPI. Um, Maybe it's like another KPI which we don't track today is, I guess the level of engagement between hiring teams and TA teams. Maybe we should, like, are you responding back in a timely manner? Is the JD high quality enough? The person whom you hired from the get-go, we do the skills engine matching, right? So, what are the skills that, like, LinkedIn does it for example today? Did you actually end up hiring the person you thought you will hire? Those kind of KPIs probably will come up. They're not there yet, but those are the kind of questions of, like, where were things disconnected from the get-go, and how can we catch it earlier? But if you only focus on one end of the spectrum, which is efficiency, you'll likely never catch it. But efficiency with cost, with quality, that triangle, if you start tracking, I'm sure will yield a lot more KPIs as we move in the digital connected world.
Thank you. Janet, we can't hear you.
There we go. How about there?
Perfect
Thank
now.
you so much. In addition to really having those alignment conversations with the hiring manager, I think agreeing upon what does it mean, quality of hire, right? So thinking about quantitatively and qualitatively, HR and the hiring manager should really agree on what is that measure of success, because the only way to ensure that we are really collaborating on that and bridging the gap of the miss is to involve the hiring manager early. Like Manish and Chrisana have said, like it's their responsibility. I used to say to some of my site leaders that your hiring is your most important job. And a lot of times they don't necessarily consider that to be, but how you build your team, how you're evolving the needs of the outcomes that you're trying to drive as the supervisor really is impacted by hiring decisions. And so making sure that we train our hiring managers on recruitment, on making sure that they can answer those questions and feel more confident in the process. Sometimes they don't do it frequently. And I love what Manisha said around helping guide them through that process, really. And so thinking about, for me, in addition to the hiring and the candidate experience, what we do a lot of is those post-hire conversations with the hiring manager and thinking about the outcomes and the process improvement strategies that we can have. And those are just a couple of ways that we try to bridge that gap. Because when both sides collaborate effectively and are in alignment on what success looks like for the hires, the organization can hire faster without sacrificing the quality of the talent.
Thank you all so very much. And thank you to everybody in the audience. It's always amazing to see when people are engaged and they connect to the topic and they contribute with their own insights. Now, we are 3 minutes away from wrapping this conversation up. And I was wondering if I could squeeze in a last question. And that is, I really want to acknowledge and appreciate those people in the audience who live the reality of an HR function of one. We always tend to think about HR as a team, and it is already overwhelming what we need to tackle. But for those of us who are an HR function of one, I would really love to ask each of you for a medium length sentence, like a recommendation. Where should they put their focus? What is crucial for them when it comes to measuring success in a technology-enabled HR function? What would be your one sentence, punchline style encouragement for an HR function of one? And in the interest of time, I will pass the e-mic around. We will go counterclockwise. So Manisha, I will give you a few seconds to think about, just thanking every single one in the audience and you on the screen for being here, and also Jessa for being backstage and having our back in all things technology and logistics. So, Manisha, HR function of one, encourage them.
You're here to make things happen, not to do everything yourself. So leverage the right folks for the right path. I know you said half a sentence, but example would be ensure hiring managers are accountable for hiring the right candidates. Ensure managers are responsible for doing the right performance reviews and connecting with folks. You are an enabler. So I would say think of yourself as an enabler, not like, the director of the movie. Everybody needs to play the part, and you better direct them that they're doing their parts. Maybe that's a better way of saying it. You're the director of the movie.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. Krisana.
I would say that focus on employee engagement and digging into those results, collecting that data as much as possible, and the business results should follow. And to kind of expand on that is I think that, a company is nothing without its employees. And if your employees aren't happy, then you likely won't be successful, especially if you're a team of one, your company's probably pretty small. So keeping those really important people engaged and productive so that the revenue can also follow in line, I think is a great place to start.
Thank you. Janet.
I think as an HR function of one, the best way to start measuring success is really making sure that you're in alignment with key business goals and that you use your HR metrics like employee retention, performance, and outcomes that directly support those objectives.
Thank you. Manisha, Krisana, Janet, I hope we will cross paths again in many conversations. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And I hope you enjoyed this just as much, at least just as much as we did. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of September. And I hope I will get to welcome you again tomorrow for another conversation, part of our monthly series. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.